Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. Erin Summers alongside Todd Graffagnini, actually right here on the field at Saints training camp. We just saw the team put pads on for the first time. A little bit shorter practice as the NFL kind of tries to manage the team working back into pads. Just an hour and 45 minutes, but still a lot of action. And we saw a couple firsts. So, Todd, I just want to get into a couple things here. But first of all, with the pads coming on, what did you think?
Well, you get to see football, and Dennis Allen talked about it after practice was over. This is when you can start to really evaluate your team, especially on the offensive and defensive lines, because prior to that, you go 4 practices last week, but you're not hitting. And today was the first day that you actually saw some contact, and it was good, and that's what it's all about. So you got to work your way into it as the training camp moves on, and we'll be playing a preseason game in a couple of weeks, and then you really start ramping things up. But no, it was good to see, and it's always really the most anticipated day when you get here to training camp is when the pads go on for the first time, and everything appeared to go rather well.
The only thing that we saw different on the line was the addition of defensive end Chase Young, because he has not gotten any team reps so far. He has been working back from that offseason neck surgery. We saw him doing some individual stuff, but still not a lot of contact. The pads came on today, and he stepped right in. Looked great in his reps.
He got 3 reps. They were all pass rushing reps, designed that way. Again, we just heard from Dennis Allen. I think you just got to give a lot of credit to Chase Young and the training staff, because this has been worked out to the T. And again, D.A. mentioned this. He has done everything that has been asked of him in the rehab sense, and they had it all mapped out. And today was the day that they were going to put him out there, and he certainly looks the part, Erin. Again, he had 3 pass rush reps, and you could argue he was unblockable all 3 reps. So, again, his health is going to be such a key for this Saints defensive line, because we've talked about it on the pod already. He's just a physical specimen. And if you get that strength and power coming off that edge, you're going to have yourself a dynamic pass rusher. But, today was the first step. We've seen him in individual drills, but today was the first time with the pads on. You actually saw him out there during team drills getting reps, and that's got to be a very, very good feeling for Dennis Allen and the defense.
Yeah, and I would assume for Chase himself, just to be able to get back on the field and line up like that, take a couple hits for the first time, knowing that he's working back from that injury, but he's able to do that is probably going to do a number for his confidence. It's been fun watching him out here, because he is just absorbing everything that he can. I watched defensive end Cam Jordan talk to him about some different techniques when they were, hitting on the dummies and stuff like that in individual drills, and he's taken it all in. And I don't think he's offended by the help. He's really just trying to make the most of this 1 year that he has here. So anybody that wants to offer advice, he is more than willing. But really good to see him back on the field. And as we're kind of wrapping up things here, it's interesting to see tight end Juwan Johnson is running some routes, catching some passes. So while he's not participated in any practice, he has been doing things to the side, which means he's starting to progress back from his foot surgery. Alontae Taylor's on the jugs, which is funny because a secondary, doesn't necessarily need to catch.
DBs can't catch. That's why they're DBs and not wide receivers.
Right, so he's just working on those skills. Always something to tweak, I guess. The only thing that I saw maybe from a negative standpoint was left guard Nick Saldiveri left teams with an injury. He kind of slowly walked off the field, so we'll kind of keep tabs on that.
Dennis Allen mentioned it was a calf. I didn't see it. There were a lot of moving parts here during training camp. I did not see that, but obviously you did. But Dennis Allen did mention it's a calf.
Yeah, so as I said, he was walking pretty gingerly off, which is tough because he's somebody that's dealt with injury, and they were speaking so highly of him after the last practice on Saturday and what he's been able to do on this offensive line. And that's an area that we're watching every single day because now that the pads are on, we definitely want to see how some of those players are just adapting to this new system. We got new people in different roles. Offensive line-wise, anything that you noticed on that side of things, the ability to run a little bit more in this offense, I think is going to be something we see.
Yeah, there were a couple of plays this team period that you saw the running backs get to the second level. And again, that is significant because you've got pads on, So that means the O-line is blocking guys up. Interesting, I thought Landon Young got a lot of reps today with the ones and the twos, just spelling Taliesin Fuaga just a little bit, but nothing major there, no injury. But of course, Landon Young, is just such a jack of all trades, and he is just going to be so key to this offensive line because he's able to play multiple positions. And I just thought it was interesting to watch him get a few extra reps today.
Yeah, it's always good to have somebody that can fill in at any moment, any position, and he's kind of been that swing man for the Saints for a couple years now. I was able to catch up with a Saints legend that was on hand in defensive tackle Leroy Glover, who was watching practice. He's enjoying the weather out here in Southern California, but definitely said he's still going to be in New Orleans this season to catch the team. So here are his thoughts after the first practice in pads. Leroy, it's great to see you again. It's another season getting ready to get underway with training camp here. How was it just kind of watching the guys out on the field today?
It's exciting. It's an exciting time, as you mentioned. It's football time. And so whenever you can get back out here, today was the first day in pads, which is always exciting for the guys. A lot of pads popping, a lot of action. And it's just another way to build our team and get prepared for a long season.
Yeah, you were just getting a neck massage there. It was Deuce McAllister who came up behind you. Good to see some of those guys here as well.
Yeah, it's always good to see old guys you to play with, old guys you looked up to when you were a young player as well. Guys like Deuce, who's doing a phenomenal job, and other guys who are members of the organization. Always a good time to see them folks.
The pads came on for the first time today. Anything that stood out to you?
Well, number one, I think whenever you're doing this, trying to keep guys off the ground, you did see some explosive plays from what you want to see. You did see some pressure and some guys around the quarterback. I mean, you did see a lot of good things. You see people just flying to the ball, a lot of energy. And so that's really the main thing you want to take away from your first padded practice. It gives you something to build off of.
You are obviously a former defensive lineman here with the Saints, 6-time Pro Bowler. So you know a thing or two about what linemen should look like, what they should be doing. Chase Young got out in teams for the first time since we've seen him here in a Saints uniform. Did you see anything particular about maybe just his body, his mechanics that stood out?
Yeah, I think everything you see from sort of the visual optic standpoint is what you want. You see length. You see a guy who's very muscular, put together very well, a guy who can move and who can run. Just trying to get him now, getting him into the playbook. Get him to understand how our system, our way of doing things, and our culture. And I think he'd be a perfect fit for what we do.
Culture has been a big word that's come up during the offseason, trying to get back to that Saints culture. A clear set of expectations, making sure people know what they need to be doing, being very detailed. What do you see Saints culture as?
Well, it started with the Dome Patrol for me. Started with those guys. Many of those guys are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and then it just keeps going towards playing phenomenal defense. Number one, stopping the run, being extremely physical, playing fast defensively. And then the most important stat defensively for this team is going to be our ability to take the ball away from people. If they can do that and get the ball back to the offense, we're going to be looking pretty good.
Yeah, they've talked a lot about the pass rush and how that needs to be a little bit better this season, more athletic off the line. When you look across the linemen, the defensive ends, we mentioned Chase Young, but Cam Jordan, he has held down that role for quite some time. You think he still got it?
He still has it. He's been ageless. 14 years of doing this stuff in the trenches, been productive, been a good leader in our locker room as well. He's the type of guy that you want to start his rookie year here and to complete and a phenomenal career with one organization. Doesn't happen often. And then lastly, which something that it doesn't get talked about, is his leadership ability. He is the leader of the defense.
Yeah, definitely. On the offensive side, things look a little bit different with the new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. Did you notice anything?
I think where you'll notice it is with your backs. Obviously, AK is going to love this type of scheme, the zone type scheme with a lot of cutbacks. The quarterbacks are going to love this type of scheme where you can get the ball out on the perimeter a little bit more and take some shots down the field. It's going to take some learning because it's a little bit different and from the way they did things last year, but I think they can pick it up and have success at it.
Definitely. Are we going to see you in New Orleans this year?
You are. I don't know when, but I will definitely be in New Orleans for a lot of ball games. It's going to be fun to see everybody down there.
Awesome. Well, it's great to see you here. Hope you enjoy your time at practice, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate Leroy joining us. It's going to be good to see him later on this season once the Saints get on the field for some game action. I also was able to catch up with NFL Network reporter MJ Acosta-Ruiz. She was on hand with a contingent from the network. We'll see some more of her coworkers later this week and catch up with them. But let's get into this conversation that I was able to have with MJ. You're out here, different training camps.
Yep.
Now, the Saints today. What are you looking for when you go to see some of them out there on the field?
The main thing I look for is energy, right? Because I think that sets the tone. As everyone knows, this is literally the beginning of the season for us who work in the football space in July. So I think the energy that you feel right off the bat when you walk into a training camp, how the players are getting along, how they're meshing, how the coaches are looking, it really gives me sort of that pulse of how a team is looking as they're heading into the year.
When you come to see the Saints practice, I'm sure there are some players that you definitely look for with defensive end Cam Jordan. Mm-hmm. Speaking of energy,
oh my God,
who are you out here looking for, wanting to talk to?
You know, it's funny because Cam, of course, you don't have to find him; he finds you, right? the energy sort of precedes him, and not only is he a friend of the networks, but I think just one of the most recognizable players, let alone Saints, around the football league. But it's funny you mentioned defense because Chase Young was a guy that I really had my eye on, right? Coming from the 49ers, where I think folks expected him to be a little bit more impactful than he was. I think here he has this opportunity with guys like DeMario, with guys like Cam, to really learn even more. He's not new to the league by any means, but I still feel like he has so much more to do, to show, and certainly a massive chip. If you think back to just his first year in the league and all that he accomplished that year, to get back to that or close to that. So Chase is somebody that I really have my eye on.
Offensively, no more Michael Thomas in the wide receiver room, and it's going to be Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. What do you expect from those two young players?
Yeah, well, the young ones are always fun, right? Because they pop off, like we saw Olave have a heck of a year last year. And then it's sort of that pivot into, great, we can see what you can do in terms of production. What's the leadership component, right? So how are you blending not just your production on the field, but your leadership in the locker room? And I have no doubt that each of them will be able to do that.
When you look across the league, what are some of the big storylines that you're following?
Well, I think my favorite storyline is the one that's not written yet, because all we can do is go off of what was happening last year. And in this league, as we know, with very few exceptions, nothing just transfers over year to year. There are coaching changes. There are personnel changes. Obviously, the players switch teams. Somebody gets injured. So I think it's always interesting to see, okay, this is what we expected from this team. Oh, snap. Not at all what they were giving us. So I think the expectation mixed with, okay, a little surprise in there is what I keep my eye on.
You're going to be in New Orleans in February, as will much of the NFL.
Right.
The Super Bowl being there. Other than the Saints, because let's be honest, they're going to be there.
Right.
Who do you think is going to be in contention at the end?
Oh, my God. I'm going to get real biased for a second. All right. As a Miami girl, let's see what these Fins are working with this year. I think last year there was so many injuries there on that staff, but I think what Mike McDaniel has really done with the team, the amount of talent that they have and how the players have developed, the ones coming back from injury, could be really, really interesting in the AFC.
All right. Somebody to watch out for. MJ, thank you so much for joining us. Always good to have some of our friends from the NFL Network on the podcast. Mentioned earlier the injury to Nick Saldiveri. Definitely want to continue to watch that. But of note today, there was no cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, running back Kendre Miller, or defensive tackle Brian Brzee on the field. Those three players dealing with injuries from last week. Again, we'll continue to give you guys updates as we see people on and off the field through the remainder of training camp. There are 3 days this week before the first day off on Thursday, so we'll have another podcast Tuesday and Wednesday this week, and then we'll be back again Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday before another day off on Tuesday. But things are definitely picking up here with the pads on. It's been a lot of fun. If you missed any of the coverage, head to NewOrleansSaints.com.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.